olive oil.
So, Derick, I've been writing this book, We Who Wrestle with God, as you know, and I've been closing it up. I've been writing the final chapter, which is a chapter on the Gospels. And one of Christ's injunctions, I believe it's in the Sermon on the Mount, but it may occur in other places, is to store up treasure in heaven. And so I've been trying to understand, and not on earth where moths can eat it or rust can get at it or it can be stolen. And I've been trying to understand what that means. Now, a lot of the ethic that's embedded in the Gospels and in the biblical corpus as a whole is an ethic of eternal view. So the idea is something like, so Abraham, for example, becomes the father of nations because he embodies a set of paternal attitudes and actions that propagate best across the longest conceivable span of time and in the largest number of situations. The selfish idea with regards to propagation and genetic propagation doesn't make any sense to me, because human beings have this long-term investment strategy with regards to their kids. You don't just have sex and reproduce. That doesn't work at all. In fact, if you just have sex and reproduce, your children are very much likely to die. They're going to be abused, they're going to be abandoned. So you have to have sex and then you have to invest for, 18 years. That's a long-term strategy, but it's not 18 because there's grandparent investment and there's even great-grandparent investment. Then you might say if you conducted yourself properly as a father, you would embody a set of sacrificial gestures that would maximize reproductive fitness across the broadest conceptual span of time, right? And so that's an implicit ethic. Now, a fair bit of that has to do with reciprocity. So when Christ says that you should store up treasure in heaven and that that's the most effective form of treasure, what he's essentially referring to, at least practically speaking, is something like reputational integrity. So the idea would be, a currency can inflate and collapse and you can lose everything. But if you've stored up a body of goodwill in a distributed community, well, even if everything around you falls apart, you're going to have people who are perfectly willing and eager to come to your aid just to fulfill their obligations of reciprocity. And that's the hospitality, by the way, that's made so much of in the Old Testament, right? And this is, I think, what human beings really figured out, is that our best investment is in the minds of others. And then you can imagine how that can be gamed, right? Because if the most important thing I have is my representation in the minds of others, then I can use narcissistic manipulation and Machiavellian manipulation to game that reputation. And here's another thing that happens in the Gospels that's so bloody interesting, is so Christ's primary enemies in the Gospels are the people who game reputation. And so he goes after the Pharisees and the scribes and the lawyers, and he basically says, you people are claiming to act under the aegis of divine inspiration, but all you're doing is falsely elevating your status in the marketplace, right? Which is essentially exactly what he tells them. And so they're gaming the system in order to falsely obtain reputational points. And there's no difference between that and virtue signaling, is there?